Kelly.
All right, good morning. We are in lesson 13 in our textbook. Lesson 13 in our textbook. But for scripture, we're in Deuteronomy chapter 32. Deuteronomy 32. Let's have, if we wouldn't mind, one reader read for us verses 39 through 43, just as a recap. Deuteronomy 32, 39 through 43. Let's see what that says.
See now that I myself am He. There is no God beside me. I put to death and I bring to life. I have wounded and I will heal, and no one can deliver out of my hand. I lift my hand to heaven and declare, as surely as I live forever, when I sharpen my flashing sword and my hand grasps it in judgment, I will take vengeance on my adversaries and repay those who hate me. I will make my arrows drunk with blood, while my sword devours flesh, the blood of the slain and the captives, the heads of the enemy leaders. Rejoice, O nations, with his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants. He will take vengeance on his enemies and make atonement for his land and people.
Yes. Now I'm going to read verse 44 through 47. 44 through 47. So Moses came with Joshua, the son of Nun, spoke all the words of this song in the hearing of the people. Moses finished speaking all these words to Israel, and he said to them, set your hearts on all the words which I testify among you today, which you shall command your children to be careful to observe all the words of this law. For it is not a futile thing for you, because it is your life. And by this word you shall prolong your days in the land which you cross over the Jordan to possess. Really quick, question 16. Which is talking about verse 17. Explain the statement, it is your life. What does Moses mean by that? For it is not a futile or vain or useless thing for you, because it's your life. And by this word you shall prolong your days in the land which you cross over the Jordan to possess. What does that sentence mean?
Like to follow all that was written in the song that Moses gives to them, right? Mm-hmm. And then do everything that is said, and don't turn away from it. For that's their whole life, to stick with God at all times.
Good. Right, commitment. Anybody else? For it is not a vain or wasteful thing for you, because it's your life. And by this word you shall prolong your days in the land which you cross over the Jordan to possess. What does that mean? What is Moses trying to say?
So when you have finally chosen God, He's your life.
Good. Right, commitment. That relationship is stronger. Good. Anybody else? When they do these positive things that the song is talking about, ultimately, who will be impacted the most by that? Right, themselves, the children, right? So it's your life, right? Like when you go to the doctors and the doctor says, hey, you need to do this or this, the doctors say it's your life. What does that mean? Well, he or she is not their life, right? They're fine. They're saying this advice is for you. In the advice, Moses said, if they do it, Moses promised what will happen to their life on earth if they do the things that the song says to do. Verse 47, what will happen? It says, by this word, what? Right, you'll prolong your days. What does that mean? Okay, so you'll be able to live long and enjoy this land you're about to possess if you do these things, right? So these things are much like going to a physician, right? Physicians say, hey, do we know when someone's going to die? No, but there's a greater chance for you to live long if you eat right and exercise. But at the end of the day, it's up to you. It's your life. Someone will say, okay, well, I choose not to do that. Or someone else may say, oh, I choose to do that. So that's kind of this is what Moses is saying. And then once you make that commitment and have that relationship with God, then everything will fall into place. Okay, verse 48. Then the Lord spoke to Moses that very same day, saying, go up this mountain of Abarium, Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, across from Jericho. View the land of Canaan, which I give to the children of Israel as a possession, and die on the mountain which you ascend, and be gathered to your people, just as Aaron your brother died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his people, because you trespassed against me among the children of Israel at the waters of Meribah Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin, because you did not hallow my name in the midst of the children of Israel. Yet you shall see the land before you, though you shall not go there into the land which I am giving to the children. Question 17. What was Moses permitted to do before he died? What did God allow him to do?
Look at the land.
Go up to the land and look at it, right? He couldn't actually go into the land. Why? Because God said why?
Because he disobeyed.
Yep, because he disobeyed God, right? What language did God use, depending on your translation, that he said you didn't do what to my name? Sounds like the Lord's Prayer from the New Testament. If you have New King James. Yeah, hallow, right? You didn't hallow my name. What does that mean? What version you have? From verse 51.
He says, uphold my holiness.
Good, okay.
Because ye sanctified me not in the midst of the children of Israel.
Good, okay. So sanctified, this concept of holiness, hallowed his name, reverence, right? You didn't show respect is more modern term that we would use. So my name to the children of Israel. So you can go up and you can see it. For question 18, how is the great sin of Moses described? That's what it's based down to, respect and reverence, right? So God isn't necessarily mentioning physically what he did, right? Like, oh, you hit the rock instead of speaking it. But he's talking in terms of what the sin actually represented, which you didn't show reverence, respect, glorify my name, honor my name to the people. Okay, bro. Read it. What version you have?
Amplified.
Okay, what does yours say for 51?
Because you walk faith with me in the midst of the Israelites at the water of Kadesh, the wilderness, because it did not set me apart as holy in the midst of the Israelites. Okay, yeah, this is sanctified, setting apart as holy, like putting God in reverence, right? The way we talk to each other cannot be the way we talk to God, right? That's why I said this reference wording that Jesus uses in the New Testament when they said, hey, how should we pray? Right? And it's, you got to give God praise for his name first and foremost, right? Don't just start going in asking God for a laundry list of things like you would do a friend or your parents, right? First, Jesus was saying, give reverence to God for being God and holy, and thanking him for all the things he's already done for you, right? Then you can get into these things. So showing God that you set him apart from everyone else. Okay, good. So we're done with the song finally. Let's look at chapter 33. And only a couple of more verses here, and Uncle Mo would be no longer a part of this story. Let's look at, someone read for us verse of chapter 33, 1 through 7. What does that say? This is the blessing with which Moses, the man of God, blessed the Israelites before his death. He said, the Lord came from Sinai and became upon me as from Seir. He flashed forth from among 10,000 of holy ones, a flaming fire, the Lord, at his right hand. Yes, he loved the tribe, his people, all those consecrated to him in your hand. They followed in your steps, they accept your word and receive direction from you. When Moses commanded us a law as a profession for the assembly of Jacob, the Lord said, the Lord was king in Jeshurun, Israel, which the head of the people were gathered, all the tribes of Israel together. Let Reuben men live and not die out, but let his men be few. And this he said to Judah, Hear, O Lord, the voice of Judah, and bring him to his hand. With his hand he contend for himself, but may you be a help against his enemy.
All right, great. Now Moses is talking to the people, and he's basically blessing the tribes. First, he talks to the whole group, right? And in verse 3, how does God feel about the people, according to Moses in verse 3? He loves the people, right? All the saints are in his hand. They sit down at your feet. Everyone receives your word. Verse 15, who is king? Who is king according to Moses? In verse 5, sorry, not 15. Verse 5, who is king according to Moses? The Lord, right? Because it has a capital H, and he was king in Jeshurun, right? Capital H, he is king. When the leaders of the people were gathered, all the tribes of Israel together. Then he starts talking to each tribe. Moses talks to Reuben and tells them to do what in verse 6? Okay. And what about multiplying? The second sentence, or the second half of that first sentence. Chapter verse 6. Right? So don't let it be just a little bit of you guys, right? What does he say to Judah in verse 7? Okay. Right, gather them together. Right? Let his hands be sufficient for him mean what? A modern word we would say starts with a C. Someone say, oh, it doesn't matter. Don't focus on what you have or don't have. Just be what? Starts with a C. Someone say, oh, yeah, just be content, right? And then may you be a help against his enemies. Someone read for us verses 8 through 11.
About Levi, he said, your Theman and Aaron belong to your faith servant. You tested him at Messiah. You contended with him at the waters of Meribah. He said of his father and mother, I have no regard for them. He did not recognize his brothers or acknowledge his own children, but he watched over your word and guarded your covenant. He teaches your precepts to Jacob and your law to Israel. He offers incense before you and whole burnt offerings on your altar. Bless all his skills, Lord, and be pleased with the work of his hands. Strike down those who rise against him, his foe, till they rise no more.
All right. Someone read for us Exodus 28 and 30. Exodus 28, verse 30. Because this name of Urim and Thummim we've heard before, but a long time ago, a lot of months ago, so we forgot. Exodus 28, verse 30. What does that say?
And thou shalt put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and the Thummim, and they shall be upon Aaron's heart when he goes before the Lord. And Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel between his heart before the Lord.
So remember when the priest had to dress a certain way, we put up on the board, remember it was 9 stones on the breastplate, right? And 2 of those were these stones that were mentioned here. So what Moses is saying to Levi is let those stones be with your Holy One, your capitalized, right? God, whom you tested, with whom you contended at the waters, who says of his father and mother, I have not seen them, nor did acknowledge his brother, right? They shall teach Jacob your judgment and Israel your law, which means that what would their role be in the congregation or in the nation, right? Priests, teachers, spiritual leaders, right? Verse 11, bless his substance, Lord, and accept the work of his hand, strike the loins of those who rise against him, and all those who hate him, that they rise not again, telling them basically to do what? In verse 11, Levites should do what? So they should be the priests, and what else should they do? Yep.
Strike down those who rise against them.
Right. So they have to defend God's word, right? Because they're supposed to be the spiritual leaders and the priests. So any enemies that rise up against God, strike them down, right? Okay, let's see. What does he say to Benjamin? I'll read verse 12 of Benjamin. He said, they loved of the Lord shall dwell, the beloved of the Lord shall dwell in safety by him who shelters him all the day long. He shall dwell between his shoulders. What does that mean? Basically, what is Moses saying to Benjamin tribe? God will provide for them, right? Then he'll provide safety for them, safe passage, blessings, those sort of things. Someone read for us Joseph 13 through 17.
About Joseph, he said, "May the Lord bless his land with the precious dew from heaven above and with the deep waters that lie below. With the best the sun brings forth and the finest the moon can yield. With the choicest gifts of the ancient mountains and the fruitfulness of the everlasting hills. With the best gifts of the earth and its fullness and the favor of him who dwelt in the burning bush. Let all these rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the prince among his brothers. In majesty, he is like the firstborn bull. His horns are the horns of wild ox. With them he will gore the nations, with those at the ends of the earth, even those at the ends of the earth. Such are the 10,000s of Ephraim, such are the thousands of Manasseh."
All right, great. Oh, what does he tell Joseph's tribe, who we know as Manasseh's tribe? What does he tell them? Right, they're blessed, right? He starts talking about some things. He keeps saying the word precious, right? Precious what? Gifts from heaven, right? Things, right? Fruits of the sun, produce, mountains, hills, blessings from earth, right? In the favor of him, God dwelt in the bush. Let the blessings come of the head of Joseph and on the crown of him who's separate from his brothers, right? Who was separate from his brothers, right? His glory is like a firstborn bull, and his horns are like the horn of the wild ox, right? So he's giving Joseph his due praise and blessings, and the tribes who follow afterwards, because they were the ones who were separated, right? Joseph was the one separated, and if it wasn't for Joseph doing what God asked him to do and having a relationship with God, they never would have been where they are today, because they would have died, right? Because it was a huge famine, and Jacob and his sons were doomed. So all of that blessing only came possible because of Joseph, right? So none of these other tribes would even be in existence if it wasn't for Joseph's tribe. Okay, somebody read verses 18 through 21. Zebulun and Gad. What does he say to those two? 18 through 21.
Zebulun, he said, "Rejoice, Zebulun, in your going forth, and in your tents. They will call people to the mountain. They will offer righteous sacrifices. But they will draw out the abundance of the seed and the ministering of the seed. Of Gad, he said, Blessed is the one who rides Gad. He lies down as a lion and tears his arm, also the crown of the head. Then he provided the first part of himself, where there the ruler's portion was reserved. And he came with the leaders of the people. He executed the justice of the Lord and the ordinances with Israel."
Great. All right. Zebulun, what does he say? Sounds like evangelism. What does he tell them to do?
Rejoice.
Right? Rejoice and do what? Right? Sounds like evangelism. So be happy and rejoice, but do what when they go out into the world? Do what? Verse 19. First, call the people, right? Call out to the people, evangelism, right? Go call out to the people, or tell the people, right? Not them, tell the people they should offer sacrifice. So sounds like evangelism and encouragement, right? To remind the group, hey, keep doing the right thing, right? Don't forget to offer your sacrifices and partake of the abundance of the seeds and the treasures of the hidden things, right? What about Gad? What does he tell Gad to do?
Everybody who come after them.
What about verse 21? What was reserved for them?
The best land.
Right? The lawgiver's portion, the best, was reserved for them. He provided the first part for himself, because of a lawgiver's portion was reserved to them. He came with the heads of the people. He administered the justice of the Lord and his judgment with Israel, right? If you want to cross-reference, go back to Numbers 32, 16, and 17 to remember. Because remember, we're talking about these physical brothers, but then we're also representing the people that came after them, right? So some of these things are referencing things that the brothers did a long time ago, and then also referencing the people that came after them. Okay, somebody read for us verses 22 through 23, Dan and Naphtali.
And of Dan he said, Dan is a lion's whelp, he shall leap from Bashan. And of Naphtali he said, O Naphtali, satisfied with favor and full of the blessing of the Lord, possess thou the west and the south. Okay, great. Now, reference verse for this first in Dan is Joshua 19:47. Joshua 19:47. It's just talking about the children of Dan and what they will kind of grab as their portion when they get into the land. Verse 23, Naphtali, satisfied with favor and full of the blessing of the Lord, they'll possess what part of the land when they get there? West and the south.
West and the south. Okay, somebody read for us verses 24 through 29. Asher.
And of Asher he said, let Asher be blessed the children, let him be acceptable to his brethren, and let him be his living God. Thy shoes shall be iron and brass, and as thy days, so shall thy strength be. There is none like unto the God of Jeshurun, who rideth upon the heavens in thy heart, and in his excellence on the sky. The eternal God is thy refuge, and coming out everlasting arms. And he shall toss off the enemy from before thee, and shall say, Pardon. Israel then shall dwell in safety alone. The fountain of Jacob shall be a land of oil and wine. Also his heaven shall drop down to you. Happy art thou, O Israel, who is life of thee, O people saved by the Lord, the shield of thy health, and who is the sword of thy excellency. And thine enemies shall become liars unto thee, and thou shalt tread upon their handpieces.
All right. Asher is what ranking blessed of the rest of the sons, according to verse 24? Most blessed, right? Your sandal shall be iron and bronze as your days, so shall your strength be, right? So that's a nice blessing for them. 26 through 29 is talking to everyone, because we know this word Jeshurun means what? 2 weeks ago we learned what does Jeshurun means, Israel, right? That's why in verse 5, Moses said God was the king in Jeshurun, right? God was the king of Israel. So basically he's talking just in general to end this chapter. No one is like God of Israel or of Jeshurun, who rides the heavens to help you in his excellency on the cloud. The eternal God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms. He will thrust out the enemies from before you and will say destroy. Right? So basically he's telling them what in verses 26 through 29 about God and them. What does he tell them? Yes, he will protect them, right? He will bless them. And verse 29, he's saying what in terms of the people? Right? They'll be blessed because of God's protection, right? And they'll say, because God is protecting you, because you're blessed, how will they be viewed in the rest of the world, according to verse 29? Before enemies. How would it, verse 29, after it says, happy are you, O Israel, then what does it say? Who is like you, right? What? Wow, where else can I find somebody as blessed as Israel throughout the world, of people saved by the Lord, right? So their only reason why they will be special from the rest is because of what? Because they'll be saved by the Lord. In the future, they're going to miss that. They're going to think it's based on heritage and all these things. But the only reason why they're blessed is because they're saved by the Lord. And we learn that from verses 26 through 28, because it says that God will protect them and thrust out their enemies, and he will fight for them. Out of this, in some years, they're going to start to think that they're the reason for their blessings, right? Much like how people act today. People will pray for something, job or school or car or house. And when they get it, a lot of times people forget, oh, you asked for that thing. Oh, this is just came from my own talent, my own abilities, my luck, whatever, what have you, right? So sometimes we forget that some of the things that we have, well, we know from scripture, all good things come from God, right? But we forget that some specific blessings we ask for that we receive we forget to give God his due praise. And that's what's talking about this. So after it looks like the people in the world, no one would be as blessed as them because God saved them. What's the second half of 29 talking about? This shield. What is this talking about? Shield of your help. What will their enemies do to them when they see them? Cower, submit to them, right? You shall tread down their high places. Why? Because they'll be scared because of God. But remember in the song, he said, when you don't do what God asks and God remove himself from you, people are not going to be scared anymore because they're not scared of you, right? They're only scared because of God, right? It's like somebody going into the playground, talking a lot, arguing with people, and people scared because they know they have a cousin or a brother that could beat up the whole recess. But if the brother or the cousin don't exist or don't come around, are people scared anymore? No, right? Because they're not fearing you. They're just fearing the people that represent you who will come to your defense. That's the difference, right? These people in the future are going to start feeling like people should fear them because of how they are instead of fearing God, right? So they miss this whole mark. So this whole section here, talking to all the tribes, talking to the people in the beginning in general, talking to the people at the end in general. Question 19 says, how is this like a last will or testament from Moses? Right? Modern day times, we know like a will, or someone would say like, oh, so-and-so said this on their deathbed. How is this kind of like that way that we would look at as modern day? Like a last time you speak to a loved one, or a will. Some people have living wills, or some people have a will when they're deceased. Then the lawyers or the power of attorney comes in and reads what the person wrote to the family members or friends. How is this like that?
That will be in the way for them to follow all truth. You must follow whatever the will said to get whatever.
Right, specific instructions of what they should do in the future, right, in terms of their relationship with God and their blessings. Good. Anybody else? How is this like a last will?
Basically, like separating what everyone has, like letting them know, like know when you like spend money up.
Yep, right, because he's telling each group kind of where they're gonna go. Some are gonna go south, west. Some are going to get this best part. Some are going to get this part, right? So he's dividing up for them. So when they get in the land, they're not just like musical chairs. You just run to whatever open chair, right? They're supposed to be doing things according to what God already planned for them, right? And that's like a will, right? A will say, okay, this person gets this thing, this person gets that thing. Sometimes a will says why. Hey, I want this person to have this because of this. I want this person to have this because of that, right? A lot of families, rich families, have wills, right? A lot of middle class or poor families do not have wills. And usually funerals are the most annoying time because first there's no money left to have a funeral. So now people scrambling for money to have a funeral. And do most people have money laying in the bank that they're not allocating to bills? No. That's why when funeral happens, most people say, oh, I don't have any money. That's first problem. Second problem is little family heirloom. Somebody come to the repast and say, oh, grandma said 30 years ago that I can have this necklace. And anyone in the room remember that? No. Someone say, no, she told me 10 years ago I can have it. Now, what is that, right? Who are we going to believe? This is saying that should never happen, right? Because you should get east, west, south, north, this side, best part, this, go here. Your role would be protector. Your role would be spiritual leader, blah, 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 right? So these basically saying to them, here are your instructions as a group. And here is your blessings and instruction individually as tribe and as people so that they can have a focus when they get there. Each family should be playing a role. Each family should be playing a role. Okay, let's read verses, chapter 34. Someone read 1 through 8. Chapter 34, 1 through 8.
Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is across from Jericho, and the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead as far as Dan, all Naphtali, and all the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the western sea, the south, and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him, This is the land of which I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I have caused you to see it with your eyes, but you shall not cross over there. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in the valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor, but no one knows his grave to this day. Moses was 120 years when he died. His eyes were not dim, nor his natural vigor diminished. And the children of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. So the days of weeping and mourning for Moses ended.
All right, great. Now, what does verse 4 mean? What does God mean when he says, I have caused you to see it with your eyes? What does that mean?
He had promised him that you're going to see
Yep.
the promised land, but he's not going to go there.
Good, right? So you can go up and see it, but you won't go inside. Good. Anybody else? I have caused you to see it. Right? Then in the beginning it says, he went up to the top, and the Lord showed him all the land. Verse 1. What is that? What does that mean? Right? Sounds like a miracle. If you went up to a mountain, can you see that far? No. Who's showing you? God, right? Sounds like a miracle. So it sounds like Moses and God are having a one-on-one. God is getting him to be able to see far, it said, right? All the way here, all the way. Remember, there's millions of people. So we're not talking about, oh, you just go on the top of UB and you look over Bridgeport and see, oh, there the trees are Trumbull over there. Like, that's nothing, right? This is being able to see millions of people. Only 150,000 people live in Bridgeport. So that little bit you can see from UB looks nice, but that's not what millions of people worth of space will take, right? It will be way, way bigger than that.
So that would be like seeing from the top of UB, the state of New York, the state of
far,
all of the New England states.
Yep. You would need to see far.
Probably out to Michigan, maybe.
Probably Connecticut. I don't know how many people live in Connecticut, but New York City is 8 million people, right? If anyone ever been on the top of the Empire State Building, you can see to Jersey, you can see to Queens, kind of, right? And you got to think of how many millions of people like that. Like, oh, goodness. When you look, right, and you walk all around Empire State Building, you thinking, my goodness, how many millions of people, right? But yeah, here is not like that because UB is like one of the best views of a city here. But again, you only seeing like maybe 200-something thousand people. If you look into Trumbull or Stratford, or maybe you could see a distance to Fairfield. So he's seeing way further than that, right? Millions of people, and he gets to see it, but he can't go inside. Right now, it's interesting. It talks about his age. Is how old?
120.
But then it said, even though he's 120, what was his physical kind of his facilities? What was his sight like? What was his facilities like? He was good, right? He still could see good. He had his faculties together, right? So it's not like he was old and decrepit and they're like, oh, look, Moses gonna die. Like an old dog or cat just goes to the woods and you say they're never gonna come back because they look so old. Look, the eyes are gray. They can't even see. Look, go away. Love you, bye. Not like that, right? He could see fine. He had his, body faculties together. But he died because this was his time to die based on him and God's discussions of life and all those sort of things we touched on for a lot. But it's important to know that at that age, it wasn't like he was like some frail person that the people could take advantage of, right? Where they can ask Moses something, trick him, and go back and say, oh, he promised me now the best part, right? He said we're most blessed because he don't know what he was saying, right? It wasn't like Jacob and Esau, right? Where their dad was so blind, he rubbing on fur and don't know the difference between his own son's skin and a fur, right? Oh, let me feel. Oh, this must be Esau. How? What I feel like a goat, right? Oh, I don't know. I can't see good. Moses wasn't that way. So God blessed him all this time with his faculties, his sight, his wit, his blessings, right? And this is important to note because he was very old, right? 120 years old is a very, very long time. Remember, we're past the time where people were living for like 900 something years. So this is a long time to be alive, 120 years. Don't forget that Moses lived a whole lifetime, 40 years away from children of Israel. 40 years is a lifetime, right? He lived a whole 40 years, right? He had a wife, he had a nice little job, he had a community, he had kids. So that was a whole nother life, right? He had a whole life in Egypt and a whole nother life in the desert, then came back, right? And then a whole life leading these people to wherever they just came. He lived like 10 lives already, right? Worth of experiences that most people will never get to have, right? This is a big deal. So big that people cry for how many days? 30 days. Now, when he was alive, people give them a hard time, right? Remember, it was so much his father-in-law said, hey, you got to get some help. Why don't you pick some good people and kind of make them like the judges, and they'll take care of the small matters, and then you only do the big matters, right? When he was there, he'd say something. Do they listen? No. Don't go there. God said no. They go anywhere. Some people die. Don't do this thing. They do it. But when he's gone, what do people do? Oh, my goodness. 30 days. Now, they're at the crescent of the promised land. But do they say, yes, Moses is gone, let's run in? No, right? Sad. 30 days. Because when Moses is gone, some people may feel what kind of way? Now what? Because remember, when they got scared, they said, Moses, you go in between us and God. But Moses is gone now, and who's left? God. Now, maybe people feel like, what? I'm scared. Maybe God's going to want to talk to me. I don't want to talk to him. Got to be somebody else, because God too scared. He wouldn't even let Moses see promised land. I'm nowhere near as good a person as Moses, so he would be yelling at me, right? So think about people's psychological, spiritual emotions, right? Think of like a minister in a work somewhere, and for some reason they pass away suddenly, right? The church is devastated, right? It's not like that Sunday morning everyone's like, well, he just went on to see Jesus, praise God, right? People sad, like, now what are we gonna do, right? Even though you know where Moses is going, it still doesn't change your immediate reaction. They mourned for 30 days. 30 days they mourned. Now, it was a time way back when Moses was younger. He went up to get the 10 Commandments. They waited 40 days. And after 40 days, he didn't come back. What did they say? Oh, I don't know what happened to that guy. He was nice, too. Nice guy. Nice staff, had a nice robe. Nice guy. Liked it. Had a little speech impediment, but he was a nice guy. But, well, he's gone now. We got to make a new God, and we need a new leader. 40 days. But now, that generation of people long gone, right? They're already past. These, remember, are the kids who were in the wilderness for 40 years. This is a different kind of people in terms of their mindset to God. When you read through Old Testament, remember, generations are going by. So that's why sometimes the response be positive and sometimes the response be negative, because even though it's the same group of people, the humans have changed, right? The human beings have changed. This group of people mourning Moses were the kids who were 20 and under from the 10 and 2 spies group. So they looking at Moses way different because they know Moses from older Moses. Think of like a grandparent, right? Grandparent to grandchild interaction. That's what this is, right? Or elder, right? Someone say, well, I knew that person when he was younger, so I don't have the same relationship even though they're an elder. But someone say, no, that person is the one who baptized me. So I don't look at them like you look at them as contemporaries. I look at them as Moses to me. I look at them as like a grandfather to me. So that's why this is a big deal to these kids. Okay, let's read verses 9 through 12. 9 through 12.
Now Joshua, son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom because Moses had laid his hands on him. So the Israelites listened to him and did what the Lord had commanded Moses. Since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, who did all these miraculous signs and wonders. The Lord sent him to The wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his officials, and to his whole land. For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did in the sight of all Israel.
All right, now sad that Joshua's family is called Nun, because it make it sound like he's a nobody, right? But don't think of it like that way. But how? What was given to to Joshua? Verse 9. Spirit of wisdom. What's the difference between wisdom and knowledge? Because it's a huge difference. What's the difference between wisdom and knowledge? Right? Wisdom is what? Applied knowledge. Right? Knowledge is knowing book, chapter, and verse. Right? Oh, I know there's a verse in the Bible where it said on the first day of the week, the apostles came together to break bread. Wisdom is, why did they come together? Oh, you come for Lord's Supper, for worship is the main point of worship. That's wisdom, right? Knowledge is knowing the scripture exists, right? Knowledge is knowing Acts 2:38. You have to repent, be baptized to be saved, right? Wisdom is knowing 1 John chapter 4. Why? Because not that you love God first, but that God loved you and sent his son to be the propitiation of your sin. Oh, right? That's way different than just knowing Jesus died for you. That's just the knowledge, but why did he die? Right? That's the difference between knowledge and wisdom, right? A lot of people in the brotherhood have knowledge. People in the world have knowledge, right? Old grandparents know Psalms and Proverbs and scriptures. They know those things as knowledge, right? But do they have applied knowledge as wisdom? Right? Difference. Don't ever confuse biblical knowledge with biblical wisdom. Right? Just like in the world, right? You may have the knowledge of credit and debit. Wisdom is your credit score is at 800. I don't care if you know what credit and debit is and your credit score is a 400. What is that to me? Is that impressive to me that you know credit and debit but only have 400? No. I want to take financial advice from somebody whose credit is 800 because that's applied, right? When I go to the gym, I need a physical trainer with muscles. I don't want a physical trainer who out of shape like me. What you going to tell me? Oh, well, I'm out of shape, so I know what to do. Nope, sorry. Send me somebody with muscles who already applied what to do to their body. So then I can see, oh, you did it, right? Same way with the world. Some of us aren't effective because we're just giving biblical knowledge. People want to see, have you done that yet? You telling people in the world, oh, you need to be a nice person, you need to go to church. They say, okay, but you're not a nice person. So why should I be a nice person? See, like you have to live the Bible first. We do as Church of Christ a great job of giving the doctrine knowledge. I want us as a brotherhood to work more on wisdom. Like last week, I want our congregation to be more nice to each other. I don't want to hear about verses that I know all of you have memorized. I want to see something needs something of one of the women coughing, a brother going to the back and getting water. Not water for your wife. Of course, I expect you to get water for your wife. I want you to get water for another sister who's coughing like that way. So you say, oh, that's my sister just as close as my wife is. Right? When we go to picnics, I don't want you to throw your plate out. I expect people to throw their own food out. I want you to throw someone else's food out. Right? I want you to let someone else go in front of you. I want you to walk past someone this morning and say hello to someone that's not your family, or you say, oh, hello. That's applied, right? That means when visitors come in here, visitors will say, oh, this place is way different than other churches. Remember, they don't know book, chapter, and verse. So if people come in here, we just start spitting verses at them, that's not going to mean something to them, right? Because that's from relationship. It takes time to understand and learn and all those sort of things. But when you go to school first, the teacher don't say the first day, all right, what's 1 + 1? Anyone can tie their shoe. Where do you live? The kids be like, what? I'm a kid. First, I need you to be just as nice as me as my mom is, or I'm going to cry and I don't want to be here. See what I'm saying? So the teacher first have to interact with the kid and gain their trust. Can't just immediately start yelling at the kid and giving instruction. First day of preschool or kindergarten pop quiz. Kid's gonna say, I'm a kid. I don't even know what the word quiz means. I just got here, right? I have to learn. You got to interact with me. This is this difference between knowledge and wisdom. Joshua had the knowledge because he was always around Moses. Remember on the Mount Sinai when Moses was getting the commandments? Joshua was halfway up or halfway down, depending on how you want to look at it. Then God said to Moses, "Up, look at your people. Look. Go get them." Moses come down and meet Joshua, and Joshua tells Moses, "Look, it's like a war, I hear." And Moses said, "No, sweetheart, you're so young, just so little baby. That's not a war." He said, "They having a party." Joshua would think, what would they be having a party about? Oh, poor thing, just so innocent. Look, he bless his heart. Because they worshiping another God. Joshua would think, what? Why would they be worshiping? Because he is just young, right? All this time he's learning. So he had the knowledge, but he needed God to bless him with the wisdom because now he has to be the leader. So go fast forward as Bible student. After Saul, after David, there was a guy named Solomon, and God asked him what? Hey, anything you want, you can ask me. Go ahead. Boom. And he said, bless me with the wisdom to be able to know right and wrong, because who can guard and lead your people? And God said, wow, this God, this is what I've been looking for. Now, because you didn't ask for money, I'm going to give you more money than anybody else, but I'm going to give you more wisdom than anyone else, right? Because he felt, yes, I'm my dad's son, but my dad's gone. So I need to know how I should be a leader to the group. So who will teach me? I want you to teach me, right? That's what Joshua needed. Sometimes God blesses you with things that you don't know you need, Joshua's case. Sometimes he blesses you with things that you ask that you know you need, Solomon's case, right? But this is very different, the difference between knowledge and wisdom, right? A lot of congregations have knowledge, right? Church of Christ, I pray as a congregation, we know we have knowledge and have the doctrine. But does the community feel the applied biblical concepts, right? Does the community feel, right? Like, not that you know, okay, there's no instrumental music and those things. Your visitor don't care about that. They don't, because I'm just visiting, right? I didn't even tell you I'm going to stay the whole service. Don't beat me over the head. I just get in here. You telling me what y'all don't do. That's like first date. You already saying, hey, let's get one thing clear is I don't do long walks on the park. I don't like roller coasters. You'll be like, what kind of date is this, right? Like, tell me about you first. I don't even know if I'm going to stay through this whole date. I don't want to hear about what you don't like. That's we don't have the best approach in all different settings, I feel, right? Every congregation is in a different setting. The way a city congregation is to the community is going to be different than the way a suburb congregation is to the community, right? Different demographic, right? Same content, same doctrine, right? Last week, McDonald's is the same recipe, same food, but their approach, a highway McDonald's looking at getting customers way different than a McDonald's downtown, right? Way different, because highway got customers have to stop to eat or to get gas because they're traveling, so they don't have to do as much. But in a community, I have to advertise more to get you to come into my restaurant. Those sort of things, right? That's the difference. So when you start talking about how the community perceives you, right? How the community perceives you. Do they perceive you as having knowledge or wisdom? That's where I think congregations need to ask themselves that across the whole world. Because sometimes we only view from our eyes, right? That's why we say you need to think of how the visitors feel. Because you sit already where you sit. But think if a visitor came in here, right? Will a visitor feel love? Because faith, hope, love, these three. But the greatest was what? Love. Didn't say the greatest was faith. Didn't say the greatest was doctrine, right? Didn't say the greatest was singing. The greatest was sermon. The greatest was Lord's Supper. Because remember, I'm new. I don't know what sermon is. I don't know what Lord's Supper is. I don't know what doctrine is. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Just like a kid. I don't know what math is. I don't know what reading. I don't know. I just came to school, and when you come home, the parent want to know what? How was school? The kids say, I don't know. I don't know anything about what she was saying, but she or he was nice. Because that's, as a parent, that's what you want to know. Kindergarten, right? Or preschool. I want to know, are you nice to my kid first? Because if not, I'm taking my kid to another school. Because my kid missed me. My kid only knows me. This is the first time I'm giving my child to somebody else. We have to think of that way in terms of church, interaction with visitors in the community, because they don't know what we already know. They're going to judge us based off of wisdom. And that's what Joshua is blessed with, right? He needed to have the ability to have this wisdom. And then lastly, Moses. Moses was a one of one. Was there anybody like him afterwards, the Bible say? Nope, not even a chance. The best you can hope for is second place, right? This guy was the one of one pinnacle. Nobody could do miracles like him. Done. It's like if you come along and you say, hey, and you date somebody and they're a chef, and you say, look, I got to tell you something right now. My grandmother made the best whatever, so you have no chance to convince me, right? God bless whatever food you make, but already I had the best food ever in this world. The best you can hope for is second place best food I ever had, right? Like this guy was number one. There was no one even close second to them. So when Jesus came, this is why there was some resistance, because they felt like, what? Oh, do you think that you're above Moses? Because before you equate yourself to God, there's another guy in your way, right? Before you jump to being son of God, first you got to tell us, do you think you're better than Moses? Because to us, Moses is like the son of God. So you better than Moses? Right? You better than Abraham? Right? That's what they wanted to know, is speak plainly to us. Like, how are you putting yourself up against our forefathers? Are you equal to them or better than them? Right? And that's what a lot of times the Pharisees wanted to know from Jesus. So when we look at this, it's a blessing, right? You see the transition from Moses to Joshua. We get Moses praise, right? There's no one like him. We see all the blessings that he did for the people. The people mourned for a long time. And then we transition to Joshua. Yes, he had the knowledge, but the wisdom came from God, right? Yes, he had the knowledge, but wisdom came from God Almighty, right? That's why when we get to James, and it talks about getting those who freely ask, right? You have to ask God for wisdom, right? The knowledge is there in the world. Genesis to Revelation, the knowledge is everywhere. The Ethiopian eunuch was reading knowledge. But Philip asked him, do you know what you're reading? Yes, I can recite what I read, right? That's the knowledge that the words are on the page. But the Ethiopian eunuch response was what? How can I understand this unless somebody teaches me, right? I need wisdom. I know the words. I don't know what it means, though, right? 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, I see on the board you have a line and another line, and now you have 2 lines. But I need to apply that word. If I see not lines, what if I seen apples or grapes or dollars? Now can I still make it equal 2, right? Because I seen on the board. That's how kids in school know the math on the board but fail the test. Because it looked right on the board. You know why? Because it is right. But now when the teacher changes the examples and now you have to do it, then you say, oh, I don't know how to do it. That's because that's the wisdom. You don't have the applied knowledge to be able to say, no matter what things I add together, I will know the mathematical outcome. That's the thing from a spiritual standpoint. That's the difference, right? When the Bible talks about discernment, right? Some people have the discernment and some people don't. Doesn't mean that you're a less Christian or you don't know as many Bible verses, but it's not about how many Bible verses you know. It's about, can you apply the Bible to your life and teach someone else how to apply it to their life, right? That's what we need to focus on. As a congregation, we need to now transition into the community and focus people into applied biblical wisdom, because people have a lot of Bible knowledge. People go to school and have a doctorate, so they know where the verses are, but they don't know the meaning of the verses, right? Everyone see kind of how that's different, right? So way different than knowing. You may run into somebody who knows more verses than you, right? I never tell somebody I know every verse in the Bible, but I know what verses mean. That's the difference. So if you ask me something, I can tell you what it means, and then I can have a study with you. I may not be able to start quoting verses off the top of my head, but I can tell you the meanings from applied, right? Taking verses, putting them together, cross references, and someone say, oh, that's what that means. I thought this meant something else. That's the thing that the community is looking for. And how do we know that's a big deal? Because God gave that to Joshua, right? As the leader, he gave it to Joshua, and then James talks about him giving it freely to us. So this is the blessing that we have. Next week, we'll look into the next section, our book. We're off of this. We're in the section 4. So we're going to look at Joshua and the people entering into Canaan. So if you want to read ahead, next week we will be in Joshua 1. So take a look at that, chapters 1 through 4, and we'll look at that over the next couple of weeks. Now we're over time, so let us transition by having a word of prayer, and then we'll go on. Heavenly Father, thank you for this beautiful and blessed day. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to study a portion of thy word. We ask that you be with us, guide, guard, and keep us through all things. We ask that you bless us with wisdom and the knowledge that will never go away. We ask that you bless us with peace. Be with those individuals as they transition into the worship service without the loss or harm of any for who are traveling here at this time. We ask that our worship service be presented to you a sweet smelling aroma to thy throne. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Thank you for all of those who had comments in our Bible reading.